I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would like to ask everyone if you would join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everyone. First order of business is going to be approval of the county board minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Discussion on the minutes. Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Ms. Tabitha, are there any additions or deletions that you're aware of for the agenda?
Not at this time.
And hearing none, I'd look for a motion.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Got a motion and second. Discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Next item of business is the sheriff's report. I see the sheriff is in the house. Good morning, Sheriff Larson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, Sheriff. Morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, Sheriff. I do have a handout that I should hand over real quick, I guess, before I start. I'm going to take one and pass it down. Actually, yeah, that's what I'm going to go into. So we'll be going over the month of June, I guess. Where's the time down? And as always, I usually share some of the photos that we post on our Facebook page. So going through, you'll see the first photo. It's Deputy Matt Messerschmidt. We're doing a contract through the city of Randall, as everyone knows. And there was a resident in Randall that actually gave us a call and said, you know, my daughter, she's been riding around with her helmet on. Is there any way that police officer that we just saw could come back and talk to her? So what he's doing is he's issuing her a ticket, and it's a I Got Caught ticket, which is good for a free Dairy Queen. So it's a good PR tool, and he definitely made this little girl's day and the mother's day, and I got a lot of publicity on Facebook, so it was a good deal. The next photo, that's just an update. We sent our two canine handlers and their canine dogs to canine schools, a 13-week school in Blaine at the airport. And then they did some vacant residences as far as working on some of their tactics. So this was a 13-week school. They're both completed. They're both certified through the USPCA, which is the United States Police Canine Association. They're dual-purpose dogs, or canines. Dual purpose meaning that they're basically certified for narcotics. They're also certified for criminal apprehension, for tracking purposes, article searches. Let's say a suspect throws a phone or they throw a knife or a gun. The canine can be called to the scene and do that article search. And they're also trained with obedience training. Learn to listen to their handler. So a lot of other things going on there as well. So it was, the good news is they're both certified. They're on call right now, so if any incident occurs in Morrison County, we have two canines readily available. So actually, I'll go back a little bit. I'll just talk a little bit more about this. The canine, I'm sorry. So I think everyone is aware, but I'll just update you again. The canine on the left is Rocky, and the canine handler is Austin Sherping. That canine used to belong to Austin's father, who was Dave Sherping. And Dave's no longer with our agency, so we had to look at the dog and the handler and say, okay, this dog is 5 years old. What are we going to do? So we invested our time and resources and money into this dog because the county already paid for it. And I can tell you the canine did very well at training. So we're very happy, very, very happy with the turnout, because sometimes when you give a canine to a different handler, you don't see the results that we saw here. So there was a lot of time and commitment put back into this canine, Rocky, this dog, who I believe is 6 years old. And like I said, I think the time commitment and the handler, it's going to pay dividends down the road, because the handler as well as the trainer and everyone involved feels that this was a successful program for them. And then, so Gator is on the right. I believe Gator's a year and a half right now for age. The next photo is just, it's our command post with some of the Norwegians in the background. We participated in the Norwegian exchange. So some of our SWAT team members got involved, and we trained approximately 60 Norwegian Guard members as well as U.S. soldiers. We taught a lot different law enforcement tactics as well as response to an active shooter. So we kind of trained them in that role. It took place at the CACTAF at Camp Ripley, which is the Combined Arms Training Facility. Any questions on any of the photos that we posted up there? Okay. I'll skip down to our training. We had 24 officers who attended handgun qualification and rifle qualification training. So this is mandated by post that we have to do this on an annual basis. So the Minnesota Post Board mandates it, and the Post Board stands for Peace Officer Standings and Training. And that's just one of the mandates that we got to do is handgun and rifle qualification, so we took care of that. We had 6 officers attend EVOC training. That's our emergency vehicle operator course. And I'll just say that's the most fun I've ever had, that training. It's a good time because, as you can imagine, we're getting paid for chasing basically a criminal around who is a make-believe criminal in this instance. It's officers chasing officers. But it's good training, and then it's a refresher on PIT, pursuit intervention tactics, where we're actually learning how to get behind a vehicle and taking that vehicle out of the pursuit. I attended the Minnesota Sheriff Summer Conference, and then we had 2 officers attend the breacher course. And breaching course just means it's basically our way to get into a residence. So we had 2 officers attend that at Camp Ripley as well. We also gave a presentation, Deputy Rushlow and myself, we gave a presentation at the Pierce Villa. We talked about scams and financial exploitations. You can see June, you can see our little chart, our table, starting on the top, the top right, the dark blue shade, 10%. We had 11 assaults. I'll just kind of highlight the major.
Sean, is this different than what you handed us, or is it the same thing that you handed us?
This should be the same thing I handed.
Okay.
We had 11 assaults. We had 10 burglaries, which is going to be your green pie shade at your 2 o'clock position. Basically, the 8 o'clock position is going to be purple, 15%. That's our damage to property. And then our 9 o'clock position, the orange pie chart, 14%. That's going to be 15 thefts. So those are our major highlights throughout the entire month. I do have a breakdown if anybody wants a breakdown on any of those. Moving on, our traffic citations. We had 236 traffic citations that were issued for the month of June. Basically, the bottom quadrant was 127, the blue shade, 127 verbal warnings were issued. The orange top left piece of the pie, we had 17%, which was 40 written warnings. And then the red quadrant up on the top, 16%, which was 38 citations issued for speed. Any questions on that? Basically, there's our 2-year comparison. If there's no questions, I'll move on, and then we'll move on to our jail stats. So for our jail, Morrison County, we averaged 34 inmates for the month of June. Itasca County, we averaged 22, so our average was pretty high for Itasca County for that month. For our total inmates on the bottom of the page, to include Morrison County and Ottawa County inmates, we averaged 58.
Excuse me, Sheriff, can you remind me again, what's our maximum capacity?
So our maximum capacity is 89 for our jail.
Thank you.
And scrolling down for our out-of-county inmates, we had 44. We collected revenue from the out-of-county inmates, looks like a total of $39,160. Any questions on any of that? I can tell you our drug task force, we're still working this OSADEF case, so they're still very busy. It's a large-scale operation in the St. Cloud area, so they're actually working shifts right now. Hopefully that'll be coming to an end fairly soon. OSADEF stands for Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Unit. So we've had a few controlled buys going on that they're still working here, but they're also, it's mandatory that they help out in St. Cloud, so they've been busy. Other than that, our contract through Randall's been going good. I have a breakdown here, I didn't hand it out, but for patrol time, we spent 29 hours for the month of June in Randall. We broke it down from patrol time, and then we got incident time. Incident time means we have a call. We showed up in the town to follow up on that incident.
Over and above?
Over and above the 29 hours. Correct. Incident time was 7 hours, 55 minutes. Patrol time was 29 hours, 25 minutes. So you can see we're meeting our goal and our objective of 30 hours, which was agreed to in our contract.
If I may, Sheriff, I know you explained it here last time, but again, those 29 hours, you have a patrol officer there, but if something happens in a different part of the county, that patrol officer does not have to stay in that area, correct?
Correct, Commissioner. So they'll do their village time, and so we make them log their village time. They'll recall the incident. It pops up on their computer, and we make the deputies put their start time and end time. And as I'm going through, sometimes I'll see an hour. Sometimes I'll see 15 minutes, but then if I'm looking at the caseload, it's because they got a high priority call, which took them out of that jurisdiction, took them out of the city. So they're doing their best to patrol that area, but yet they are responding to emergencies and sometimes have to leave.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions for me?
I think that did it, sir. Thank you.
For your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And our next item of business is the county attorney's office, I believe.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Mike, could you come on up? Certainly. Have a seat. So, as the county board knows, the board needs to approve any out-of-state travel by county employees. I'm here this morning seeking authorization to have Assistant County Attorney Mike Chisholm go to the National District Attorney Association drug prosecution training in Salt Lake City, Utah, and that's from October 1st through 3rd of this year. As far as payment for those expenses, it would come out of my drug forfeiture fund. No use of tax dollars will be employed here for this training out of state. And so I asked Mike to come in this morning and to explain a little bit more about why he wants to go to this training.
Excellent. Counselor, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. Just to give you a brief biography of my time in my service here in Morrison County, I graduated from law school in 1990. I was a public defender in St. Paul for 8 years, worked as a police officer in Colorado, and I joined the Morrison County Attorney's Office in 2014. My primary duties in the county attorney's office is I handle all of the gross misdemeanor prosecution, all of the child support enforcement, and all of the narcotics cases. And narcotics is actually my real passion and what I'm primarily interested in. Right now, I have 52 narcotics cases that are open. 13 out of 52 are first, second, or third degree cases. Those are the most serious. And while 13% or 13 out of 52 or 25% may not seem like a huge number, what we have to remember is that over the last 6 years, we would catch 1, maybe 2 first-degree cases in a year. Now we're seeing 5, 6, and 7 cases. The trends over the last 6 years, as you're well aware, meth labs have really fallen off due to the inability to get large quantities of ephedra. But the methamphetamine problem here in Morrison County is still very, very concerning. It's very popular. The meth that we're getting is very high quality, low-cost methamphetamine that's being imported from Mexico. The normal dosage for a user would be about a quarter gram. Right now, 1/8 of an ounce is selling for as low as $150. A current pound price is about $3,000. It used to be about $20,000. So we're being flooded with high-quality, low-cost methamphetamine. One of the major challenges that we're facing is that Highway 10 and 371 is a very commonly used corridor for transportation of narcotics from the Twin Cities up to the Bemidji area. And whereas we used to be able to get 1/8 of a gram or a gram here or there in a traffic stop, we're now pulling out 10 times that amount. Just some of the convictions that I'd like to tell you about. And if I may, I'd like to show you a picture and just pass this around because a lot of people don't know what methamphetamine really looks like. This is what 30 grams of methamphetamine looks like. We recently convicted Mr. Schlangen. He had 130.4 grams of methamphetamine, and he was sent to prison for 140 months. Mr. Sanchez had 37 grams of methamphetamine. He's currently out on warrant right now. Mr. Murphy is in prison for 74 months. He had 88 grams. Mr. Zimmerman had got 74 months in prison. He had 118 grams. Mr. Zamorano is in prison for 81 months. He had 461 grams. And Mr. Ortiz, who was a dealer, he's in prison for 74 months right now. He was caught with 654.4 grams, which is over 1 1/4 pounds. So what we're seeing is huge amounts of methamphetamine being trafficked through our area. The seizures are getting bigger. The sheriff isn't here, but I would like to compliment him and his officers from the task force down to street patrol who are doing an excellent job in drug interdiction. But the stakes are getting higher. These cases are becoming more complex. The reason I want to go to this training is ultimately to gain the knowledge and the experience to better prosecute these cases. And also, hopefully, my goal at the end of this is to create a working group with our other task force counties, which are Stearns, Benton, Morrison, Sherburne, and Todd, to where the prosecutors can begin to share information and intelligence and trial strategies in a manner similar to the way that the task force officers are working together to put together their cases. We could also update each other on intelligence and information about defendants. I'll give you an example. I had a defendant in Benton County that had a 5th degree. We caught him on a 3rd degree up here. I got in touch with Benton and I said, hey, if I convict him on my 3rd, will you dismiss your 5th? And I thought to myself, that's a no-brainer. Of course they'll do that. 5th degree is the lowest drug offense there is. First reaction I got out of them is, no way are we going to do that. This guy has been a problem for us for years. We've been working him. This is the first time we've managed to catch him with anything. We're not giving up our case for anything. I had no idea that he was a problem in that community. But by talking to the prosecutors and law enforcement over there, it'll give us a better ability to work as a team on a multi-jurisdictional level so that we know who we're dealing with and how we're dealing with them. So I would very much appreciate it if the board would approve this training and this trip opportunity for me. As Mr. Mittendorf indicated, I think it would be exceedingly beneficial. And the most beautiful part of the whole deal is the dopers get to pay for it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor. I look to the board for a motion,
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
and I will ask for discussion.
I just would like to say thank you for going the extra mile and willing to go out and learn a little more so we can prosecute these drug dealers more effectively. And good luck. Have
Thank you.
fun.
And you're heading out to Utah, which I've been to conventions out there. It's very reasonable compared to most convention places. The meals and everything are just, they're out of the world compared to where most of these conventions are at. Beautiful country.
Further comment?
Mr. Chair, again, I'm all for this too, is just that the more people we can prosecute and get them off the street for these drugs, because I know they're a problem, and I'm all supportive for Mike to do this.
I'll just say that Mr. Chisholm has shared his passion
Commissioner Blaine, could you pull your microphone?
for this type of work, and type of work is not something that just anybody can do. So to have the desire to further his knowledge and skill and add more tools to his toolbox is exactly what we want to do, and plus the benefit that we're not using taxpayer dollars to do this. They're reinvesting money from the drug dealers into helping put them behind bars. So I think it's awesome, and I applaud him for his desire.
Thank you. And I would look to the county attorney, and I would also look to Mike. I love the passion piece. That being said, I know that this does not discount any of your other duties as an assistant county attorney. This is just one. This piece is something that you are passionate about, but that does not mean that you do not follow through and carry through on your other duties that you have, and I more than appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Public health report is going to be next.
Me. Good
Tabitha?
morning.
Good morning, Tabitha.
Chairman and board members, we are looking to on sale 3.2 malt liquor license to St. Joseph and St. Michael Church to hold an event on the property on 12344 Lake Road in Pierce on August 12th, 2018. And it looks like the sheriff has
I would look for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Is that all? Very good.
Yes.
And I think we're ahead of extension this morning. We're moving right along. So I think we're going to skip extension for right now and move on down to Land Services. And I know Land Services is with us this morning. Good morning, Miss Amy.
Good morning.
Good morning, Amy.
I've got Chris Pence and Dale Christosik here from Board of Soil and Water Resources to go over a report that's been attached in your packet, but they're here to just really kind of present those findings.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Is it okay if I walk up and give you paper?
Absolutely.
Board Chair and Commissioners, Dale Christosik with Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources. I'm the Performance Review and Assistance Program Coordinator. And back in 2007, the Minnesota Legislature reviewed Bowser's oversight responsibility over working with soil and water conservation districts and counties and watershed districts as well, and primarily looking at how or whether or not water plans and watershed district plans are implemented. So as a result of that legislation, as a result of that audit, legislation was passed in 2007, Minnesota Statutes 103B.102, Subdivision 3, that basically authorized Bowser to develop this program and do oversight. So once every 10 years, we do a review of water plan implementation, and we also collect information on requirements for soil and water conservation districts and counties as far as reporting requirements. So we do a legislative report each year. So it's basically just Morrison County's turn to have this level 2 review, which is a little more intense review that evaluates the implementation of the plan, the water plan, whether it was implemented, and then also evaluates performance standards. And so we'll just briefly go through some of the findings in the report. So if you turn to this first blue page, it's about 4 pages in, is the summary page that will go into the legislative report when we do that in December and January. That's reviewed by our board and then submitted to the appropriate committees in both the House and Senate. And then the next, basically from about page 2 through 5, about page 6, I believe, is basically just some excerpts from the county water plan showing what the plan said it would do in that. So starting about page 7, we'll just highlight some of the findings. So findings part 1 on page 8. About halfway down left-hand column, basically, we evaluated that plan. I appreciate the work Amy and Helen from the Soil and Water Conservation District did in providing information to us. And we found that the county and SWC were making progress on 106 of 118 action items in the water plan, so that's 90%. And they've completed 23 action items, 83 items were ongoing, 12 action items were not started, and that's not uncommon that there'll be some of that. We also looked at kind of a checklist of performance standards, things that are required, considered mandatory, and again, Bowser has this oversight responsibility regarding plans and reports and those kinds of things. The county was in compliance with 9 of 9 basic or required standards, and they had also achieved 9 of 13 high performance standards. That's outstanding performance. The SWCD also was in compliance with 18 of 18 basic standards and 11 of 14 high performance standards. As part of this review, we also looked at the Wetland Conservation Act compliance and implementation. So we had our wetland specialists come in and spend some time with the staff, and we found that the county and SWC are doing a good job, a very good job of implementing that program. So that was good news. Part of this, we also sent out a survey, and it looks like most of you participated in that survey. We sent out the survey to 7 staff and board members, and we got 6 responses back, so very good response. And then, so we asked about successful programs. You guys talked about Water Festival, revised comp plan, protecting area lakes, aquatic invasive species, the ACUB program. I know that's an extremely successful program, buffer law, and then LCCMR drainage management as well. The SWC also did very well. I won't highlight much of that. We presented this to the SWC board, I think, last month, but again, had very good results there as well. If you turn to page 11, we asked your partners to provide some feedback on the kind of some of their interactions with the county. Amy provided us with 35 partners. We had 9 responses back, so about 26%. And so in this this table here kind of shows we asked the partners to rate the county department on communication, quality of work, customer relations, initiative, and timelines and follow-through. And you can see that the ratings were very good, mostly strong or good. These are high numbers. I've done about 60 of these now, and these are very, very good numbers. So 2/3 of those partners report the quality of their working relationship with the county is strong, and then 33% said was good, but could be a little bit better. So good response there. And then I'll just, on the next page, we've got the SWCD ratings. I don't know if Helen is here or not, but you can see those numbers are very good as well. mostly strong to acceptable, and so these are good numbers. So, page 13, general conclusions. We stress the need for the county and the SWCD to continue to work together strong, with a strong working relationship, and we think that's occurring now, but need to maintain that. There will be opportunity for one watershed, one plan. I don't know if you've heard much about that yet, but kind of a new program legislature authorized. We commend the county for those high-performance standards that were achieved, and the SWCD as well. And there are no action items. That would be for some of those mandatory requirements. We would ask you to take care of those, but there were none because both departments are doing a very good job. I'll ask Chris to help me with the recommendations. We came up with 3 recommendations. Maybe you can spend a little bit just talking about each of those. The first one was to focus implementation on the water plan by using prioritized, targeted, and measurable criteria for measuring progress for goals and objectives. Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Dale. My name is Chris Pence. I'm a board conservationist. I work out of the Brainerd office, and so I kind of work in north central Minnesota, and my role is to work with the counties and the districts on some of the grant monies that comes through the state, and making sure that those monies are put to work and implemented on the ground. And before this, I worked up in Crow Wing County for quite some time, and I got to work with Amy and Helen on some collaborative projects. And so I'm pretty fortunate, I think, to be able to have this be my work area now as I work for Bowser. But one of the things I think just to point out is that Morrison just recently updated its water plan, and I think it's putting Morrison in a really good spot to be set to move into the comprehensive watershed management plans, that we're moving away from the county plans and moving more towards a watershed base. And I think you will remember that there's the Rum River has put an application to be considered for the planning process, of which Morrison will be part of. And so the idea is to be more comprehensive on a watershed basis, and there'll be some funds available to help that planning process. In the past, counties, have kind of done it on their own, and there's been some limited funds, and these new funds, I think, will really provide some opportunity to get some more data information, because what we're looking at is a prioritized, target, and measurable system of how do we implement and put projects in the ground. In the past, a lot of times there's been really good projects done, but it hasn't always been prioritized. It's been maybe more of a random, conservation, which is great to get good things done, but we really want to focus on where do we get the best bang for our buck. And so I think as we move forward, you're going to look at prioritizing those projects, targeting where's the best place, and then how do we know that we've done something? What's our measurable outcome? And how do we know maybe when we get to a point that we've done enough work in this area that we now need to work in other areas? And so that's a real goal on that. So I think one thing that I think it'd be important to point out is that there's a great relationship between the county and the Soil and Water Conservation District, and I would encourage you to maintain that. Obviously we know that Helen is moving on to retirement, and I think this document that Dale put together can be really used as a guide for the new person to come in, because I can't imagine being the new person that's going to follow Helen in. That's big shoes to fill. But I do think a document like this can really help provide some guidance and some help as to what are some of the things that need to be focused on, and that. So that's why I really think this is a timely project, and I'm glad that Dale chose this time, for that. Another piece I think that's really important is that Helen comes to your Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meetings and provides some really good feedback on some applications. But then I also think it's important to note that when Amy's looking at the application, she's applying the water plan and seeing how does that jive with a comprehensive plan, with your local water plan and that. And that's not always done as well as it should be. And so I think that's something that Morrison should be proud of, is just really taking that water plan and applying it to these applications. So I think that's, from recommendation number 1. And then number 2, and I've talked with both Amy and Helen on this, is just how do we get more information on your website to better inform the public of the great things that are happening in Morrison County. One of the things that with the legacy dollars that come out, that's required to be on the website, and I've talked to Helen a little bit, and I was doing some searching on her website, and it's there. You just have to kind of work a little harder to find it. I know that she's working with the county on some website updates, so I think that's just an important recommendation too. And then Dale, you want to, the Wetland Conservation Act piece?
Yeah, that's one issue that was kind of found in the review of the Wetland Conservation Act program was appeal, kind of the appeal route. If somebody appeals a decision made by the SWCD board, for example, on a denial of a wetland replacement plan or something like that, they can apply, or they can appeal to the Minnesota Board of Water and Sewer Resources. Some counties also have a local appeals board set up, and so just need to clarify a little bit how that would go. Typically, the way it's been handled in the past, I spent about 15 years working on this for Bowser. If a decision-making authority is given to a staff, then if that decision was appealed and then appealed to Bowser, we would remand it back to a local decision-making body like the SWCD board or the county board. So just, it seems like they need to clarify a little bit how that appeal route would go. So in summary, I'd say this is a very good report. It's, I think, reflective of the good job both the county departments and the SWCD are doing. And as Chris said, we encourage you to maintain that close working relationship and look forward to working with you on watershed district planning in the future.
Very good, thank you. Very good report. Gentlemen, we do not need a motion for this, I don't believe. However, if we've got any comment? Excuse me.
Excuse me, just one other request, I guess, would be that you provide a comment letter back to us if you relate it to the recommendations primarily. So I think I can provide some examples of comment letters, and so if the county would be willing to do that, we'd appreciate that.
I don't see that. We should not be an issue.
You're looking for one from the county board?
Well, at least from the SWCD board, in some places, the county also will provide one, so.
Because I did provide one to you. You need an additional one from the county?
No. Okay, that's right. Okay. I'm doing like 24 of these at the time, so I'm sorry about that. Yeah, exactly. We do already have those, so.
So you have what you need from the county?
No, we're good, we're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's done.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, again, to Dale or Chris, on this Wetland Conservation Act. You know, throughout the years here, we have a lot of public ditches that are needing to be cleaned. Now, what authority, if any, Bowser has or the board to clean these ditches if there's a possibility that there should be some wetland that could drain? Because again, the ditch is there, but if, now as over the years, some of these ditches haven't been cleaned for a long time, what can we do to help out? Or are we just going to be unable to clean that ditch because there's a chance that we could possibly drain some wetland that was caused by the ditch not being cleaned out?
Right. Yeah, maintenance of, Mr. Chair and board members, maintenance of ditches is allowed under Wetland Conservation Act. There's a technical evaluation panel. You're probably familiar with that. That's a SWCD staff, county staff, and then someone from the Board of Water and Sewer Resources. So what I would suggest is that you request a technical evaluation panel to look at the project, and then generally, and it's a little bit complex because of there's some provisions that protect wetlands that have been there for a very long time, but in general, maintenance can be allowed. And so I would encourage you, if you have projects, to work through the SWCD and county staff. And
So if there's a disagreement between the SWCD, Bowser, who has the final say-so on that? That'd be a question. Say, okay, you know what? We need this ditch cleaned, but yet we've got them saying, well, you shouldn't or should. My question is, does the board have the opportunity or the power, I should say, to overrule Soil and Water or Bowser and say, we need this ditch cleaned?
Mr. Chair and board members, the SWCD has been delegated responsibility for implementing the act, so they've got the ability to approve or deny an application. So, for example, if you were to apply for a ditch clean out, and let's say the SWCD denied that request, anybody could appeal that decision and, ultimately be heard by Bowser Dispute Resolution Committee. But so there is the ability, again, if that project is truly exempt and that project could move forward, then there'd be no reason it would be denied. So there is the ability. I mean, ditches are being cleaned throughout the state under approved exemptions, and so I think there's definitely a possibility. But these projects should be looked at individually, and because each one's a little bit different.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further comment, gentlemen? Hearing none. Gentlemen, thank you very kindly. Good report. A lot of work
you.
was put into this report. I'm very familiar with it.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Go back to extension?
Yep.
then?
And now our friends from Extension are here. We jumped ahead of you,
Oh, guys, well, we came as fast as we could.
but we're glad you're here.
Well, we're glad to be here.
And good morning.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. You may notice I have someone with me. So this is Eric. He is our summer intern for Extension for Morrison and Todd counties. I am going to give a brief report quickly, and then I'm going to let him give you a report as well on what he's been up to. But really quickly, what's been going on, you can see you received your report, and I just want to point out that also in there is the final report from Becky Moe on the Morrison County Youth Safety Day that she did in May. I was there. I teach there every year. It's an event I really look forward to. I enjoy speaking on safety, and so it went really, really well. I would encourage you to read that report a little more thoroughly to learn more about what happened there, and you can see really, really good numbers this year, over 300 kids. We had an awesome time this year. I actually switched from doing livestock safety, and I taught on entrapment and grain bin safety, which was an interesting switch, but all safety topics are important, so I was happy to speak on it. Other things that have been going on specifically with me and with the livestock programming in the area, I just want to cover really quick. So summer has been super, super busy. We did already have our Morrison County Dairy Field Day. That was held last week on Thursday. And if you remember, last week on Thursday, it poured rain all day long. And so we were at Rainbow Acres LLC, which is the David Van Heel family by Swanville. We held this field day at their calf facility, actually. You may be familiar with the family and know that their calves are raised in a retrofitted chicken barn. They moved to that facility about 10 years ago, and 2.5 years ago built an additional barn on that property for their weaned calves, for as their herd has expanded, they've just run out of room to have everybody. And so that was an excellent field day. We had about 100 people in attendance. So it's one of the biggest dairy field days I have ever done. So I was really excited about those numbers and to see the crowd there. Lots of positive feedback so far. I just had a chance to kind of glance at the evaluations. People really learned a lot and were happy to be there. And I and my colleagues all heard a lot of comments from people of they were very grateful to have it there and to have something a little more specialized since we just talked calves, nothing else there. So people really enjoyed that. So we're already looking forward to planning another dairy field day for next year. But it was great, and we're grateful to the Van Heel family and to all of our local sponsors that helped make it possible. Other things that are going on a programming note, I do want to note that I am working on a summer beef program, so likely another field day or tour type program. I have one dairy field day left in Stearns County on August 7th, so I'm trying to kind of sprint to the finish line on those, and then we'll start to get more details together for this beef program. So we starting to look at a few potential hosts and what that program could look like. But like I said, I've kind of been focused on getting the dairy stuff done first, and then we can switch over fully to getting the beef thing together so I can give it the time that it deserves. Other things that are going on, many of you are aware of what is going on right now in the ag economy, and there's been a big concern about farmer stress and farmer mental health. And I believe I've spoke to you in the past on this topic, and I have been doing a lot of education on that. So the Department of Agriculture put on their Down on the Farm programs this winter. I went to one in March, and that was learning about, as somebody who works with farmers, how do you recognize the signs of stress and then more of serious mental health issues? How can you help farmers when they're experiencing those problems? How do you communicate with them so they don't feel threatened or singled out or anything like that? And then we also did a program this winter on farming in tough times and focusing on what you can do during times like this from a financial standpoint, and also just from a self-care and mental health standpoint as well. And then in June, myself and Eric, and then we also have an intern in Stearns and Benton, Michaela Simcoe, she came with me as well. So the three of us, and also, we brought a dairy farmer from Morrison County with us down to campus, and UMass, the Upper Midwest Agricultural Safety and Health Center, put on a forum that was all about building resilient agricultural communities and how do we help farmers during these times and give them the services and resources that they need. And so that was a really fun day of learning and working with people who, touch on farmers and touch on farmer mental health in all different capacities. So people from mental health organizations were there, other farmers were there as well, pastors, people who work in extension, people who work, at the Department of Ag and in funding and research and on these types of topics. So it was a really, really good day, and I think we all learned a lot. And I was grateful to be able to bring a farmer from Morrison County there to kind of share her thoughts on, really what the farmer perspective is and how they can best be helped. Because I think sometimes we sit around and go, how can we best help farmers? And we don't always ask the farmers themselves how they can best be helped. So that was a really good experience, and we're hoping to see some positive things come out of that. And hopefully you are aware that there are several resources available to deal with this current, I don't want to call it crisis, but with the situation that we're in. So of course, the University of Minnesota Extension has their free confidential financial counseling for farmers. And if people are interested in that, they simply can call Extension's farm information line. And that's how we keep it totally confidential. And as I mentioned, it's free. And then they will be connected with the financial counselor that is geographically close to them. So that program has been going on for over a year, and it will for sure continue through to this spring. Beyond that, I'm not sure. It will just depend on what the needs are for it still. And then the Department of Agriculture also has a lot of things they're doing. You can find resources on their website, all sorts of resources based on dealing with farmer stress and financial stress and how to help them with that. They also relaunched the Farm and Rural Helpline, so that is a 24/7 free confidential helpline. People can call if they just need someone to talk to. The nice thing about it is you are talking to somebody who's not your pastor, not your neighbor. They don't know you. They're not going to gossip about you at the grocery store, or out at the cafe over coffee. And so I think that's what's encouraged a lot of people is it's hard for farmers to admit when they need help. I think by and large they're a really proud population, and that's a really good thing. And I think it just speaks to their work ethic and who they are as people. But sometimes we need to admit when we're not okay. That's really what my stance on the situation is. And so it's nice that they have this helpline available to them. And I do have, I forgot to bring them with me, but I do have small business cards. They're just a business card size that has all that information. That's, is the phone number and what it is and everything. So if any of you are interested in those, so you can have some to hand out to people, or even I've tried, just leave some at the bank or leave some on a bulletin board in the feed store so people can discreetly just grab them if they think they need them. So if you would like some of those, please let me know and I'd be more than happy to send you some. Other things that are going on, Let's see. So an exciting project I want to let you know about. It's still in its infant stages in the state of Minnesota, but it is going to be coming to Morrison County. I can say that with some confidence. So I have been working with UMass, again, the Upper Midwest Ag Safety and Health Center. They're housed at the University of Minnesota. I worked with them on various projects. I worked with them on my grad school project and have maintained a really great relationship with them. And some of you are aware that farm safety is, a personal and professional interest of mine. And so I've worked with them on various projects, and they have this new project that was done in Wisconsin that they've brought to Minnesota. They've got the funding for it. They've hired someone to work on this project, and the title of it is in Spanish, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, and I didn't write it down. But basically what this program is, what it's all about, is it's doing farm safety training for immigrant dairy farm labor. So by and large, people who do not speak English or do not speak English well. And so while they may have gotten some training and maybe they have gotten some safety information, perhaps they haven't gotten it in a way that is best suited to how they learn and in a language that they best understand. And there was one other thought I had on this. So, and a lot of these people, they're coming mostly from Mexico, and a lot of them don't have prior cow experience. And so just this basic farm safety knowledge, some things that I think, us and especially people who have worked on farms their whole lives and have been around cows their whole lives, we kind of take for granted, and we don't realize that some of that needs to be taught, just understanding cow movement and understanding why certain pieces of equipment can be hazardous. So what this program does is it brings, Shayla is her name, Shayla Vasquez, she's who was hired to do it. She comes to the farm and she conducts 5 modules worth of training. So they cover everything just from everyday hazard recognition. Then there's a module that dives deeper into stockmanship and livestock safety, one that dives deeper into equipment safety, one that's about kind of what their rights are as workers. So a big problem we see on these dairy farms with this immigrant labor is if they're hurt, they don't always report it for several reasons. A lot of it is just nervousness about being understood, and they don't feel like they can go to a hospital and really get the help they need because they don't know how to communicate what it is that they need. And so this program will kind of help teach them that and help teach them how to be safe on farms and recognize these hazards. So in any case, and then there's a piece of it too where we work with the farmer and interview them and gather some information from them about what their needs are to help keep all employees safe on their farm. So not just Spanish-speaking labor, but all labor. What can we do? What resources do you need? And so this is a program, we have piloted it on our first farm in Minnesota. We did a lot of that last week, and then we've done a little bit of it this week. And so now what my role is going to be with this program is just connecting it to farmers, specifically to farmers in the Morrison, Stearns, and Benton area. So I already have a list of about 15 farms going, including several in Morrison County that we're hoping to get in this program. The awesome thing is it's provided free of charge to farmers. So all they need to do is just, have their employees available for 1 hour, 1 hour each for these 5 modules so they can get the training. So it's 5 hours of labor time, and that's it. And they're in Wisconsin, they did it on 70 farms, and they feel that they really did see a reduction in injuries and employees just being more cautious and understanding farm safety hazards a little bit better. So it's a program I'm really excited about. I think it will help me reach a different audience of dairy farms than what I normally see at field days or when I'm out and about doing farm visits on the countryside and that. And also, there's a huge value to this program. Like I said, we've done 1 module on 1 farm, and he already said, even though it's free, he goes, this is a program I would pay for because it's that good, and I believe in what you're doing. So I think it brings a ton of value to these farms that we can help out with it. So something I'm really excited about, but I have rambled on for a really long time. So I'm going to let Eric give a report, and then when he's done, you can kind of ask us both questions after that. So I'll let Eric take it over. He's been with us since the end of May.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time.
Yeah.
So
8 weeks.
I'm excited that you can all finally meet him. So I'll let him share about what he's been up to.
Okay. Hello. First of all, I'm Eric Comas. I'm originally from Northwest Iowa. I'll be a senior at Kansas State in agricultural education next fall, and I'm the agriculture intern in predominantly Morrison and Todd, but occasionally Stearns and Benton. And I'm working with Emily along with Beth Berlin, horticulture agent in the 3 counties, along with Brenda Miller, who is the livestock extension educator in Todd County. The majority of my time has been spent developing the small farms tour / field day that we had last Wednesday. So that was an event we had over by Staples at Russell Kleinschmidt's. In case you know him, he's an NRCS district conservationist in Todd County. So what we had there, we had, along with Russell, we had different extension educators in small chicken production. Emily talked about grass-fed beef production, along with Annie Claude, who's a fruit and vegetable extension educator from the cities, came down, and we had about 50 people there. So it was a really good showing, and a lot of different people from outside our normal footprint. Quite a few Morrison County folks were there. It was a really good learning opportunity for our growers, and a great opportunity to connect with different growers and extension educators in their fields of expertise. Other than that, I've been doing a lot of stuff as we go with my different bosses per se, writing a bunch of horticulture newsletters and stuff, and helping hort producers solve their problems. And yeah, just kind of anything, everything as the day goes. It's been good to be here. Good to be in central Minnesota for the summer.
Cool. Eric, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
We haven't had interns all the time in this program with Extension. In fact, last year, was that the first time that we actually
That was
had
the
interns?
first one we had in 5 years.
Okay. So my question to you is it worthwhile?
Yes, I would say so. I think from the extension perspective it's always the issue of how are we going to get new employees and get new blood into the system, and I think having internships is probably the best way to do it. I don't know, at least from my perspective. So I'm an ag ed major, so if I don't want to teach, what else am I going to do? And extension's a really good option for that. So if increasing that visibility is a really great way for me to see another role besides just teaching.
Thank you.
And I will say from my perspective, having Eric and then we have Michaela, that's our intern in Stearns and Benton, they are doing work that's really important and work that we simply just don't have the time and resources to get to. Obviously, summer is our busiest time of year, so it's awesome to have interns that can step up and get these additional things done, like the Small Farms program. That's something Beth and I had wanted to do for a few years, and we just couldn't get to because of the workload. And so now to have that be a really awesome intern project, it's a great experience for them to go, hey, I've put on this whole event, and I've seen it from start to finish, from the logistical side and the educational side, and putting that all together that way and advertising it, everything. So I just know for us, I mean, there's the work that they're doing is super important because it's work that we really believe in and want to see get done, and being able to have someone who can do it really makes a difference and just adds more value right back into the counties.
Outstanding. And I just have one more comment, if I can. When we were talking just before we swapped, you're talking about education, safety, immigrants, so on and so forth, and you mentioned the word modules. Are we talking about on a computer screen, or are you actually going to the farm?
So Chayla, she is going to the farm and teaching these. So she has a PowerPoint, and there's some interactive activities that go with it as well. So yes, they call them modules, but it's all taught in person, so that if they have questions or, certain things they don't understand, Chayla can, get that figured out right away with them.
Excellent, thank you. Gentlemen, questions, concerns, comments?
If I may, I always enjoy your enthusiasm and passion, Emily. You do a great job. I forgot to bring this up, that you're going to have a new partner here very shortly as a co-worker.
Yes.
Because Dan Martin's position was replaced, and Nathan Druitt is going to be starting sometime in mid-August to replace Dan Martin's column and stuff like that, correct?
Yes, so I failed to mention that. I apologize. Yes, Nathan will be starting on August 13th. so very, very soon. And I believe that Randy will remain in his interim position through that week. So August 17th, I believe, is Randy's last day. So there will be a few days of crossover with those two so that Randy can kind of show Nathan the ropes and get him caught up on what he's been doing, so Nathan's not just...
And he's a young man from, I think, Crookston, southern Minnesota, someplace.
Well, he, as I understand it, he's originally from Missouri area.
Yeah, I know that.
But yes, he and his fiance have been living in Cannon Falls.
There we go. Yeah.
Yes, yep.
Excellent. Gentlemen?
Thank you very much. I really like the training on the farm.
Awesome.
You can relate to things with people a lot better when you can stand there and look at the item that you're talking about, and I think that's a real good move. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much.
Great, thank you very kindly. Have a good day. Next item of business, I believe, is going to be the auditor's report. And Deb is here this morning. And before we go any farther, I do need to thank Amy for being with us this morning. For those that don't know, Deb Gruber's father had passed away, and thus she's not here with us today. And Amy is so kind to fill in, and I very much appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Deb.
Good morning. We have a few quick items to cover. As soon as I find my items. The first one is the four-wheeler grant. Each year we get a grant from the state to cover the Sioux Line Recreational Trail, and it flows through our Eastern Morrison County Four-Wheeler Club, and we sponsor them. And then as they disperse the funds, the money flows through us and out to them. So this is to approve that grant and then authorize the disbursement of funds as they spend it.
I look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion's made, seconded. Is there any discussion? Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
The next item is our large assembly permit. This is for the Rural Life Celebration Mass coming up early August. And I'm asking that you approve it contingent upon them providing a plan for final approval on how they're going to count the number of people coming in and them proving to me that they have the insurance that they need.
Look for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next item is a fireworks permit for Scandia Valley Township on August 3rd. Sheriff has approved this. Everything's in order. We've got all their insurance and permits in place.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion on this one? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And then we have warrants.
And I would look for a motion to pay all of the bills.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Those in favor, Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Lemire?
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
Blaine?
Aye.
And myself is an aye vote.
Thank you,
Thank you very kindly. Motion passes. Next item of business is Public Works. I see Steve Bukowski is with us this morning.
Morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Steve.
A couple of resolutions in your packet for discussion, consideration, and direction. We did receive notice last week that both of our applications for regional designation of the Sioux Line Trail and Belle Prairie Park were approved by the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails Commission. So both of those facilities now become eligible for legacy funding and go through a process and an application method to obtain funding that is controlled by that commission. The difficult part of it here is for the next round of application, they're due July 31st of this year. The applications are not terribly difficult, but we need to have resolutions that the board has considered, and the part that becomes a little difficult is how much match we consider when we make each application, because you don't have to have a match. But typically, if you don't have some skin in the game, you probably are going to not rank very well, because the higher your the match, that also generates points in the overall consideration of the application. There are two things that we would like you to consider and discuss. The first one is, I think that we would like to try and proceed with an application to replace the stairs that at Belle Prairie Park that go down to the river. There's actually 3 locations where you access the river. One is the boat landing, which is a much larger project that would take quite a bit of work, and it's going to be much more costlier than the 2 other locations where there are just stairs that were built probably not long after the county took the park over back in the early 80s. They were constructed with railroad ties, and they deteriorated substantially. In those situations, there's pre-engineered DNR plans that we would utilize, so there isn't a lot of engineering and that kind of thing that would have to go in to work before we could make those applications. That one, I would like to try and get the board to approve the resolution so we could make the application. The other one, though, that in conversation we've had with representatives of the commission, and the commission is going to want to speak to the board at our planning meeting that we have coming up, or members of representatives of the Parks and Trails Commission. But one of the things that we probably were lacking on the Belle Prairie application is the detail estimates and some of the design work. When we talk about what is the boat landing going to look like, how it's going to access, how are we going to provide access for users of the Mississippi River Trail, which follows the river, and that is the location where you can get off into our park. Those take more experience and more expertise than what the department has. Well, what they do allow in this situation is that you can make an application for funding to provide for the engineering and the expertise to put together that kind of a detailed portion of the master plan. So we have a lot of projects that were listed in the master plan, but on many of them we didn't get way down into the details, which they do look for those in terms of in the long term, how they're going to distribute those funds. And so the question becomes whether we want to make an application for funding to provide that type of work, even though you wouldn't be seeing any kind of construction out there. It'd be to develop more details of the projects that we have listed in our master plan. Part of the concern I have is we are kind of stretched right now in terms of the Parks and Trails budget. We're under contract with Eagle to do the repair on Pier 1 and Pier 2. That's a $150,000 grant with a $50,000 match, which we have budgeted for, so we have that covered. We have $400,000 in bonding money that our legislators obtained. That one's a little bit more unknown, although based on our engineer's estimate, we're going to be pretty close. It's really going to depend on the access to Pier 3 and Pier 4, which are more difficult to get to for the contractor to be able to do the work that needs to be done. And so that is kind of questionable on how much our match may be for that bonding money. And so I'm on making the application or wanting to make the application for engineering work for Belle Prairie on the projects that we have listed in the master plan. Would you rather we not make application? We could make application with no local match, and if we don't get it, then make application again in the future, or make the smallest match that we can get some points attached to our project with. So there's some different options with it that I lay out there, and I wish we had a chance to do it at a planning meeting, but the timelines on when we were notified that we were approved and trying to get this through is resulting in it having to be discussed here.
Conversation.
Steve, okay, we've been approved, so if we don't do anything this year, the money's still there at a later time to do things that you can apply for grants next year. Can you apply till all those projects are done? Or is there a time element, or?
The legacy funding source is the 3/8 sales tax, and I believe there's about 15 years left before that would have to be reinitiated by the voters. I think it was a 25-year deal. And so during that 15-year period, we could make application each year. They take applications every year. But we're applying out here for it's 2 years out before, what we're applying for now is 2 years out, is when you would see work or something come out of it.
I'd like to see you apply for those steps. I've seen those steps out there, and they're pretty bad, the ones that are there. But if you can do it without having to do a lot of engineering, you said the DNR's got that. Match-wise, I don't know, you'd have to decide that, whether you got...
I think the match that we would be looking at should probably be the max, the 25, it'd be a 75-25, and that would result in about $10,000 in our match, and the rest, if it was successful, being funded by the commission.
Steve, when we talk about that, I wrote this down, when we talk about the stairs, and I agree with Commissioner Wilson, if it's a county park and if we're going to have stairs going down to the river that, quite honestly, opinion-wise, are not safe, we need to provide steps. Is there a platform on the bottom of these steps? Or where did the steps lead, other than to water? Once you get to the bottom of the stairs, is there...
Currently, there is a small platform at the bottom. Typically, as the water is down, then people can get down closer to the river. Oftentimes, people fish off of that, get down there and fish at those locations.
In the new plan, if you will, of the steps, and I don't know that you have the answer, is the new platform at the bottom of the stairs 20 by 20?
No.
10 by 10? 5 by 5?
Probably, they're relatively small, maybe 4 by 8.
Okay.
Something of that size.
Very good. That's what I'm looking for.
If I may, Mr. Chair, Steve, you brought up the dollar figure. Again, we have X amount of dollars for the piers, and you said we're kind of going thin. Where would this money come from, this match, and then how much would we have left if something else would come up? And another question is, how long does it take to accumulate to build that back up the funds?
Okay, we are budgeting annually about $50,000 to match projects like this. So we did that this year for the grant that we had for Piers 1 and Pier 2. Our fund balance is a little over $200,000 in the Parks and Trails Fund. Our budget is about $100,000. So based on what the state auditor recommends for how much you carry in your fund balance compared to what you're spending annually, we have probably $150,000. You could go down to $50,000 based on their recommendations. So you have that. And so each year we would anticipate that it would grow by that $50,000. We would continue to leave that pretty close to where that's at. And if we didn't have a project that we got that year, it'd go into the fund balance, and we'd have it available for some of the bigger projects that we will have coming up in the future.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
There's 2 applications we're doing, right? And
there would be 2 if you approve both of them.
Yeah, one is going to be used for the steps, and the other is the engineering.
Yes.
Okay. How much can we put a match on the steps and then put no match on the engineering?
Yes.
That'd be a suggestion I would make, because like you said, we don't know how much more we're going to have to pay for that pier restoration. That'd be the safest thing to do, I believe.
I agree.
And you said the maximum allowed that we'd have to contribute to the steps is $10,000?
Based on what we're estimating right now, it would be around $10,000. It would give us the most points towards those projects. It would be...
That's a 25% on our part?
Yes.
That's for the steps, though, correct?
That is the steps.
Yes.
So my question, Mr. Chair, Steve, is the other project for the boat landing area, that the engineering part that we would be looking for or applying for grant for, where does that fall into the timeline-wise as far as our strategic plan of addressing that out there? Is that something that's 2 years out, 4 years out?
Actually, the engineering end of it, Commissioner, would be more comprehensive. There's about 10 or 12 different projects out there, from updating the playground equipment to trails, trail improvements, along with the boat landing, and those all would be looked at in that engineering part of it. And then the way I would view that, once that was completed, and we had those more detailed costs, then the board would decide the priorities of which ones we went after in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I kind of like the thought from Commissioner Lemire, the 25-75 split, if you will, dealing with the steps, because I think that's a priority. It's a personal opinion. If we're going to maintain our county park and have stairs going to the river, once again, that perhaps are not safe, I think that that's something that we need to look at and we need to address. And the engineering piece, to at least apply for that and show our interest in it. And maybe at this time, we don't have any thoughts of putting any matching money into it, but to at least apply for it. That's just my thoughts. I kind of like that.
My experience on those steps where they were full of bees, the railroad ties kind of split and the beehives were in there right when you're trying to walk down, and bees were all over the place. So to
further comment on that, how would those steps be replaced? Would they be replaced cement, steel, more old railroad ties, or?
They are treated timbers, is what, and then it would be steel rail. It would be a painted steel rail.
Okay. Gentlemen, further questions, concerns, ideas, motions?
How would you like these motions, Mr.
Have them
Bukowski?
separately. The first one being the application for the steps with a 25% match.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the Belle Prairie Park funding application approval for the steps with a 25% match.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion on this piece of it, dealing with the steps. I think the steps are an important piece to the Morrison County Park. So it's our park. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. And there's a part two?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, would be to approve the resolution to make application for the engineering with no match.
I'd look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the engineering piece of this with no match. Further discussion?
This is an important piece, too, for our future. Like you said, we can use this as our blueprint for continued funding sources.
Well, and this is something that's not new. I sit on that board, and it's not as if we never meet, that we never talk about it, or that we have never talked about it. But to get to where we are today, there was a lot of work that was put into it, and to get to where we are today took a whole bunch of thinking and planning from boards well before any of us have sat here. And we're all familiar with what our county park is. And I personally think it's a gem, but nonetheless. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair, and Steve, if we took the same, if we took the similar thought process and said, we wanted to be aggressive in obtaining that funding for the engineering part of this, and so we had to put, let's say we had to put forth a 25% match. I'm just curious, what would that dollar amount be that we would have to commit to to look at being successful?
I think when you look at the number of projects that we have included in the master plan, I would suspect we'd be in the match part of $25,000. You'd probably be in $100,000 worth of work for all of those different projects and the type of things that we would be getting involved in.
And so, Mr. Chair and Steve, so you would be not comfortable, and that planning group there would not be comfortable in committing that $25,000 at this point in time, is that correct?
That's correct. I think that we need to get our bids in on the bonding money for the repair of the Sioux Line Trail Bridge and know where we're at with that. I think before we stretch off again into another commitment.
Okay, very well, thank you.
Further discussion? Gentlemen, we've got a motion. Got a second. We've got no more discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Steve.
members of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Kowski.
I'm going to
County Board warrants, Public Works, Building Project Update. Did we need to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Let's take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Good thing, thank you.
Right.
And okay, we're back. And our next item of business is Building Project Update. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Quick rundown on the budget. Handed that out in front of you. Drop down on the contingency line item, we're just right directly below the trade contractor total. You can see we started off with $497,292 in the contingency account. Taken out $159,627.62. Not a whole lot has changed for the most part since the last time I presented to the board, with the exception of some roof issues we've had over the 71 portion of the building. As you know, through the design of that project, the 71, there was no existing blueprints. When the roofer went up to remove the roof, the existing roof drains were not located, in essence, in the low portions of the roof. That is one portion of the building that actually has what we call a slope structure to it. And so we end up having to add a couple of roof drains in, or relocate roof drains, and then redo some tapered insulation. Not a whole lot of cost, considering the amount of work that had to take place, but at the same time, too, that's probably the biggest hiccup we've had since the last time we presented to the board. Other than that, the contingency's in still real decent shape, considering we're tackling one of the toughest buildings as far as the unknowns to start the show off with.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
And I don't mean to be smart as I say this, because 1970 was a long time ago. Is it normal that you run into a project such as this one? It's a pretty good sized building, the 70s building, if you will. The annex is what it would have been called way back at the beginning of time. That being said, there are no existing blueprints.
Correct.
Just kind of blows my mind. But is that normal?
You know what ends up happening a lot of times when a project is finished in years past, the blueprints would all get bundled up, and whether or not they were boxed in a corner that subsequently sat there for years and got tossed, or potentially got water damage via a water leak. A lot of times they were located in old boiler rooms and things of that nature. It all depends, and for some reason we've got everything else for the project. It's just a 70s building that was not obtainable.
So that being said, in the world that we live in today, computer screens, iPads, your pads, whatever we have here, drives, whatever, if this is done 30 years from now by someone to do something else, 20 years from now, repair this, repair that, fix this, fix that, are there now blueprints for everything?
Yes, and what we have implemented on this project is a software platform called Submittal Exchange. So the beauty of that is all the drawings, all the change requests, the entire job is digitized, PDF format. At the same time, you're still going to get plenty of paper copies because it's still nice to have a set of drawings that lay on a workbench and open them up. But at the same time, there will be a record set that can be kept on flash drive and at the same time, too, put on the county server. The beauty of that moving forward is a lot of times your warranties and things of that nature, you know, a door closer, for example, many times has a 10-year warranty. People, future generations or people down the line are not aware of that. Boom, it's accessible. The information is right there with a few clicks of the mouse. You know what the product is, where the warranty information is at, and it's a good cost saving, yet good record keeping for years moving forward.
I didn't mean to take you off task, but I thought that was just something, well, actually something that was on my mind. But I think that that's extremely important as we move forth this year, next year, subsequent years after this.
Very much so. Good point. So outside of that, any questions on the budget for the most part? Construction side?
How does it look to you?
You know, overall, kind of where we're sitting, I think, like I said, with some of the major things we found in the 70s building, you know, next ventures in the 90s building where we had some existing documents, newer construction techniques. At the same time, John was kind of here about that time frame when that thing was being constructed or the tail end of it, so we have that wealth of knowledge as well. And so I'm hoping on that side things go much better.
Very good.
Question I have on the contingency, because to me that's the big one, you know, because you have that money put aside. Through your experience and that stuff, we had roughly a little over $600,000 in that contingency fund. We're about 1/3 away through the project. I know you said that we're sitting pretty good, but has that ever come to where you do a project and all of a sudden that contingency fund is gone? Does that happen occasionally, not too occasionally?
You'd have to really get into some mess. If you look at it, right now we're currently sitting a little over $6 million in actual trade contractor work. You know, that contingency right now is north of 5%. So outside of somebody wanting to add something to it, like an owner request for a large amount, let's just say you said, you know what, I want to add another level on a building. For the most part, historical costs, the average is there. You should be enough to finish this project and still have money remaining. But like I said, if you as a county decide you want to throw some major portion of it, then no.
So the question I'm getting to, if the administrator, the department heads come to us and they say, you know, we want, well, like the sound system, whatever. Does that come out of the contingency fund, or where do we take that out of?
Typically, those kind of additional purchases for additional equipment above and beyond, typically what I would do is start another line item. If you see down below, you've got those owner items, and I would just track it there for the time being, and then towards the end of the project, once you know where you're at with that contingency, those dollars could then be adjusted or roll over. That's what we typically see a lot of times.
Further questions, gentlemen?
No, just, we had a tour there last week a little bit, and it really looks nice. I really like the openness, and I think the public's going to be really like what's going to come from that.
And I was just going to turn it over to Mike here and see if he wanted to just kind of update on the schedule of construction.
Hey, could I ask you one more question before you leave?
Sure.
What's FFE?
Yep.
Miscellaneous owner items, FFE. What is that?
That's your furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And once again, that's down in that owner line item.
Where do you see, where's the owner, am I missing something?
Very bottom.
Very bottom, right below the
okay,
construction
all right.
total. Typically, when we set off a project, we add those miscellaneous line items for items that we know. I do know we've been talking and walking through furniture the last few weeks, depending upon how you look at it. Like I said, the initial budget for the furniture is coming in way higher than that amount. But at the same time, too, that number was generated back in the estimating phase is more of a placeholder. Typically, we run somewhere in that 2.5% to 3%. As you know, if you look at the total dollar values, we're a little bit north of 6 on that, even though I know that the furniture line item with the interior person who's handling the furniture for you is much larger than that. That's how that's derived. And that number has not been adjusted since day one. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And if there's nothing further, then if Mike wanted to step up, that would be great.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Just to give you a rundown of what's all happening at the job site, the roofers are currently working on the 70s roof again. They're planning to be finished this week and then be ready to start on the 90s roof next week. So that'll be the 70s and 60s will be completed, less the metal flashing, but there'll be another crew that'll do that. So inside the building, electrical is installing fixtures and devices, basically finish work. Mechanicals, installing plumbing fixtures. In the 70s building. They're also working in the 60s and 90s building. They tore out the boilers this summer, and the new ones are back in place, and they're piping those too. So they are working in other portions of the building, so we're going to have those up and running by September. So we're installing vinyl wall covering. Cabinets are being installed on both levels. They're going to start hanging doors next week, and then flooring in a couple of weeks. So that's kind of where we're at. And if you'd like to come by again, if you haven't been through for a while, if you'd like to take a tour, I'm always around. So
You're on schedule, is that what you're telling us?
Yes.
Perfect.
Outstanding. Gentlemen, questions?
You know, I went up on the roof with Mike, and it's interesting to see that it's like a jigsaw puzzle, how every piece comes from the factory with the slope on it and so forth. You know, when I do something, it's like just go buy another piece and fix it. And that isn't quite how this works, and I was quite impressed with that. And there's always detail in things that people don't understand, and even myself, you know, that. Now, did you put a couple drains up there? Is that what ended up happening to fix that problem?
Drains on, yes, portion of it got a couple of drains, and then another portion, they re-sloped the roof in a different direction.
Good.
So,
Mike, what is the estimated move-in date for the 70s building? Is that projected out?
September.
It is September?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we talk about roofs, you guys aren't going anywhere. I'm pretty confident that you live in this community. We're not going to have any leaks, right?
I don't want to call back.
There you go.
I live too close to the job, so.
It's called comebacks in the world, and you don't want them.
That's right. We don't want to come back. I got it. Anything else?
Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen, thank you very
Thank you
kindly
very
for your
much.
time. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you.
And then we will look to our acting administrator this morning. Amy, do you have anything for us?
I don't believe so. I don't think I've got anything that I've been told to pass on to you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again for helping out. I appreciate that a lot.
You're welcome.
Gentlemen, it's time to do schedules, and we're going to look from July 29th to August 11th. And today, we are going to start with Commissioner Lemire.
30th, we got a Public Works Planning at 8:30, and I believe that's at Public Works.
That's correct.
31st, 7:30 in the morning, I got HRA at HRA. 8:30, planning session here at City Hall at 8:30. 1 o'clock, budget meeting here at City Hall. 3rd at 8:30, we've got T-Schwack at the landfill. 7th, board meeting at 9 o'clock. Would we have Board of Adjustments on the?
At 7.
Board of Adjustments also at 7 o'clock. Department head meeting on the 8th at 8:30. Chamber of Commerce at the Chamber of Commerce at 11 o'clock. And that's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Winshire.
He hit everyone. I'm good.
Commissioner Wilson.
I've got the Health Board and Staples at 3 o'clock on the 8th. Otherwise, I am covered.
Commissioner Blaine?
I'm covered with everything except on July 2nd, next Thursday. I will be in Owatonna for South Country Health Alliance.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
August 2nd?
Getting me on the right calendar.
Here we are.
Thank you. August 2nd in Owatonna,
That's all?
other than what's mentioned.
Okay. On August 1st, I've got election judge training at 10 o'clock in the morning at the Initiative Foundation. On the 2nd, I've got an Armor Legislative Conference call at my house, and that's at 10 o'clock in the morning. I believe on the 2nd, and this will be for everyone, I don't have any detail on it, so watch the paper. At 5 o'clock in the evening at Lindbergh State Park, I think the Camp Ripley Veterans State Trail is going to maybe break ground for that piece from Lindbergh Park to Mill Park along Lindbergh Drive there.
August 2nd at 5 o'clock?
Should be August 2nd at 5 o'clock. And I have Lindbergh State Park. Now, I don't know for sure where the location is. If I learn anything further, I certainly will do that. At 7:30 on that same date, I've got an Egg Society meeting at the fairgrounds. Reminder to everyone about the Morrison County Fair, the 9th, 10th, and 11th. And I've got a Trails meeting on the 9th that I don't believe I'm going to be able to make. That doesn't need to be listed. I won't be making that one. On the 10th, there's an Armor meeting in Pope County that I will not be making, so that does not have to be listed either. Or it could be Otter Tail.
So you're not
but I
going.
won't be making that one. And that's it for me. Gentlemen, is there anything else that we need to touch base on? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very kindly. Have a wonderful week.
We have a meeting on furniture after this. I know
Furniture.
At the.
Not here, though.
Oh, it's not here?
Oh. That makes
That
two
right
of
away.
us. At least you were on the same page as I was.
What time is that at?
No.
I'm not there yet.
Well,
You're late.